In the fullness of time, on a silent night, the eternal Word was made flesh, a child laid in a manger, yet born king, not just of Israel, not just of men, but of all creation, Lord over every star, every nation, every power, and every spirit. His inheritance was won through the victory of the cross. His kingdom spreads, not through death and destruction, but through salvation. And so we gather at Christmas, not merely to remember a story, but to proclaim a kingdom, the kingdom of the child who is Lord, the crucified who is risen, the Lamb who is also the Lion. This is Advent. This is Christmas. This is Fresh Ground Theology.
Well, welcome back to Fresh Ground Theology, where good coffee meets rich theology. And I'm Nate, and I'm here with my co-host, David, and we have a special guest today, Wes, and we'll talk about Wes here in a little bit, and he's going to be probably a permanent guest host with us as we go through into the future, and we'll talk more about that later. But anyways, this is our third in the Advent series, and today we're going to dig into what is one of the most debated and surprisingly fascinating questions in biblical studies, and that is, when was Jesus actually born? We get the idea that he was born over 2,000 years ago, but what is the actual date? So most Christians are used to December 25th, and that's when we celebrate it liturgically. But what about the actual historical birth date? And was it very different? What's going on with that? And in fact, what if the heavens themselves marked the moment of the incarnation in a way that we can verify astronomically? And so today, Wes is going to take us into a deep dive into the evidence for, get this, September 11th, 3 BC as the birth date of Jesus. And that's right. That's the same date in the Jewish calendar that corresponds with Tishri 1, or Rosh Hashanah, which is the Feast of Trumpets. But before we go much further with that, we're going to jump into coffee tasting time. So, David, why don't you kick us off? What do you got in your mug today?
Well, coffee tasting might be a bit of a stretch there for the first time recording. I have a cup of Earl Grey tea.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Specifically Earl Grey, hot, in honor of our favorite Starfleet captain, Jean-Luc Picard.
I'm not a Trekkie, so I have
That's it.
abstained from such sins.
I love Star Wars, but Star Trek is also really awesome. I don't understand choosing between the two. I don't think you have to pick one or the other.
Oh, yeah.
They're both really good in their own way.
My daughter, this is Wes speaking, everybody. My daughter, she is getting into Star Trek. She has a friend of hers that is giving her all the episodes and stuff, and so she's starting to get into that. And I'm a Star Wars fan, so much more than Star Trek. So it's kind of, I just got to breathe a little bit, but it's okay.
Well, just take it for what it is and don't think of it as an alternative to Star Wars. Because Star Wars is basically a space fantasy with space wizards with magic swords.
That's true.
Star Trek is science fiction.
Yeah.
So,
but anyways,
space religion. No, okay, we won't go into that. Never mind.
Never mind.
Yeah, never mind.
That gets weird. Yeah. Wes, you drinking anything today?
You know what, guys? Man, I got in a little late. I had to hurry up and do some things, and I did not have time to make any. So I am drinking Dr. Pepper Zero as my caffeine of choice at the moment.
There you go. That works.
So I just had to grab it from the fridge.
On our Fresh Ground Theology podcast, I am the only one who brought coffee to the table, which I just brought a little bit because we were recording late at night and I do not feel like staying up all night long. And this one is one I roasted myself from Sweet Maria's. It's their espresso monkey blend. And it's a pretty smooth cup. It's a dark, you need to roast it a little darker, so it definitely has a good full blend, chocolatey flavors, some rusticy fruit notes. It's just a good, I don't know. To me, it's a good evening coffee, a good solid, like, if you're gonna do creamer or something with it, it's pretty good.
Oh, that's cool.
Lighter
That sounds
coffees,
good.
yeah. And then I also have my herbal tea, and in that cup, I have fleabane, which is a really cool name for a plant that grows around here. And apparently, if you pick it and rub it on your body, you'll get rid of fleas. It also makes a halfway
Hmm.
decent cup of coffee.
Or
I don't need
tea.
it for the fleas, so not coffee. Yeah, sorry, tea. I don't need it for the fleas, so I just make tea out of it.
Yeah.
I have other stuff for my flea problem, but just Anyway, sorry. Um.
But so
Anyways,
beverages,
that's
Yeah, I'm sorry.
beverages aside. Yeah.
beverages aside. So this is, I think this is Wes going to be your first aired episode with us. Though
This
this is not the first episode you have recorded with
right,
us.
right. I
So
have recorded one other with you, and
yeah, and that
two
one's
actually,
gonna.
and but yeah,
When is that
Yeah.
one gonna air, Nate?
That
Like
one's
in
gonna air
January?
early January. I think the second
Yeah.
week in January is what it's on schedule. So
So we have our lengthy introduction to Wes
yeah, yeah.
in
In
the
yes.
that, in
future.
the future,
But
yeah.
just really quick, he's a friend of mine.
I'm
I met
also,
him at
I,
work.
I also like
Yeah.
Nate. Nate's a
Yeah.
friend too.
Yeah,
So
But
yeah,
yeah,
no,
it's
yeah,
just
me
yeah,
and Wes are friends too. Just he
well,
happens
yeah,
to
of
know
course.
David a little bit more.
yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah. I met Wes at work. We became friends pretty quick. We would discuss theology a lot at our unnamed retail establishment that employed us. We'd be on the truck every Wednesday morning at like 8 a.m. unloading this full semi and discussing theology the whole time, pretty much. There was another guy there that was also in all those conversations. And even though I hated truck day, I look back at when I worked there and it's like, you know what? That was actually the best part of that job. Unloading that truck, discussing theology with Wes and Don. And it was just really great
Oh
Christian
yeah,
fellowship
I feel like
and just helped me
right.
grow so much.
I mean, I got to I started enjoying truck day because from a distance, like I could, I heard so much about truck day and what you talked about, and this guy named Wes, and like it's quite interesting to almost keep track of you, even though I was not party to the conversation itself, but it was quite
Well,
fun.
and I've got to say that because Nate introduced David to Michael Heiser, that's how I got introduced to him because I got to take the chewed up book that.
Yeah, that's right. We talk about
Yeah.
that a
No,
little bit more
yeah,
later.
That
yeah, yeah. We
that
get onto that
story is
in the
in
other
the
one.
episode that'll air in
Yeah.
January.
So, but
But
Anyway,
anyways,
all
so
right,
yeah, want to get us
Wes, what do you
started,
got for us
Wes?
today?
all right. Okay, so all right, so let's get to it. When people talk about, yeah, yeah, this is I'm actually extremely excited about this subject and this episode because it's just a really really interesting topic and
Mm.
something that has been researched very thoroughly by people who know a lot more about this stuff than I do. So when people talk about the date of Jesus' birth, they often assume that December 25th was chosen because the church borrowed from pagan Sol Invictus festivals.
Yeah.
And yeah, but that's actually not this whole story. The reality is more nuanced than that, right?
Yeah.
So December 25th emerged in the early church primarily through theological calculation. Make that word. Sometimes I don't say it right. But and this was the belief that Jesus was conceived on March 25th. The same day they believed he would one day be crucified. And then 9 months later you get December 25th. Augustine. Yeah, 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 right, right. It kinda, in their minds, it did. And if you did the math, it worked out that way.
Yeah.
Early church fathers believe this. Augustine, Chrysostom,
Yep. Christoph.
Sorry about that.
No, you good.
Yeah, thank you, Nate. Thank you. Yeah. And others talk about this, and it's symbolic and theological. And I think that even pointing out that those early Christians, right? The early Christians, that they had a method of trying to come up with the date of Jesus's birth, and it came out to December 25th. I think that definitely helps us in when someone does, just say, well, Christmas is just, they just borrowed it from a
Right.
pagan holiday. It's just a pagan holiday.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but then when you get into the historical question, it's different.
Right.
When was Jesus actually born in time and space? Like, when was he actually born? And one of the most compelling answers to that question is, and brace yourselves for this because it's kind of neat, September 11th, 3 BC.
Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned that. It seems like every year there's a tons of reels or shorts that start making their rounds around the holidays about how Christianity stole December 25th.
Right.
I've not had a lot of time to delve too much into it, but I have read enough that there are enough things out there noting that Sol Invictus may have officially started after the Christian celebration of December 25th. And then there's a lot of stuff I've seen where they're not really sure the exact date it would have even fallen. Some dates going to different months of the year. It it would be pretty interesting to delve into that at some point, but I know we're talking about September 11th and not December 25th, though the whole Christian stealing it is kind of annoying to me. But oh well. So even ignoring the traditional conception date of March 25th, it is rather poetic though to celebrate the light of the world, coming in to the world around the time that the days start to lengthen after the winter solstice. Like that is a kind of a poetic thing there. Anyway, I'll stop my rambling before I get too carried away there.
I mean, well, that is something worth noting. But anyways, Wes, so September 11th, of course, in America, when I hear September 11th, it means one thing, but that date is actually tied to a Rosh Hashanah, right? Like the Feast of the Trumpets. And how does that all work?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's really neat because September 11th, the theory argues that Jesus was born on Tishri 1, which in 3 BC fell on the evening of September 11th in the Julian calendar, right? And we get that date with a lot of evidence. One is astronomical data from that night in 3 BC. And what's really neat is they actually put the biblical imagery that you find in Revelation 12, which we'll get into later, but they actually put that in to a computer program for the astronomical data of that time, and they can come up with this date because they know exactly what was going on in the sky at that moment. Yeah,
Pretty
it's
cool.
really, really compelling. And then you've got the Jewish festal typology surrounding the Feast of Trumpets. This was a day when the kings of of the Jewish nation were proclaimed. He would have been born
Mm.
on King's Day, basically. The day where they're being proclaimed, and crucially, the historical synchronization with Herod's death and the Roman administration. All of this plays a part. And one of the main proponents of this view is Ernest L. Martin. In his book, The Star That Astonished the World, and Dr. Michael Heiser also. And I don't know, I'm sure by this point, the audience knows that we're kind of Heiser fan, right? And because not only because
Hazerites.
the heart Heiserites, I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
Yes,
right, yeah.
I think at one point in time, short rabbit trail, I told David that I came back from vacation, and my wife said, she had said Heiser, Heiser, Heiser. kind of like, Marsha, Marsha, Marsha. And because I talked about him too much. But, anyways, Heiser considered this a very compelling case. And we just all know how awesome of a scholar Heiser was. So, there you go.
Yeah. And to add a little theological depth there, Tishri 1 is, the anniversary of creation in Jewish tradition.
Oh, yeah.
It's the day of God's kingship and judgment. That's incredibly fitting for the birth of the Messiah, the true King of Israel. So
Right.
if Jesus was born on Tishri 1, that's not just a random day, it's a theological bullseye, so to speak. The king is born on the day the king of the universe is remembered. I know we
Oh,
we
wow.
aren't really getting into this, but I think Heiser suggested that he thought there might also have been some spiritual warfare implications
Nice.
with how we view 9/11, September 11th, like, that shot across the bow to have such death and devastation on and the actual birthday of Jesus. I know that's a thing you like to talk about, Wes. So you have
Yeah.
thoughts?
Yeah, it really is. And I will also have to say what you just said about his kingship and him being born on the day that kings were announced. That right there will preach.
Yeah.
That's just amazing. But yeah, when it comes to the spiritual implications of this date, it is amazing. It is my belief, all right, kind of application here for this is that the attacks on the World Trade Center being on September 11th, that was no accident.
Outside of strawberry conspiracies, of
I at first thought it was the Boy Scouts' balls, but we won't go into the Boy Scouts.
hey now, we're both Boy Scouts, and we know that's a lie.
Well,
Well, I was
the conspiracy theory, though.
well, if it would have been the Boy Scouts, if they would have gotten my Boy Scout troop, all they would have gotten was a bunch of rednecks from South Carolina. So
So me and her are both biggest flaws.
Yeah. Well, it involves signaling mirrors and blinding pilots. Yeah. So it's
I mean, we all know it was Genie, but I'm not going to get.
Boy Scouts. Dude.
Steve, that was the earthly, the huge side of the situation. So, but we know that the evil spiritual world, they would have known this. They would have
No.
known about Jesus Christ being born on this day.
Yeah.
And they could have orchestrated the attacks as a sort of jab at Yahweh's creation kingdom.
You mean America?
Just, wow, you brought that into it.
Sorry. No, I know what you mean.
Death and destruction on the day that he was born.
Jeez, okay. I understand. Sorry.
No, I know. But that was good.
Yeah, for our listeners, yes, no, we're quite aware of the very different natures of the America and the kingdom of Yahweh.
Right.
And well, we are Americans here on the podcast. We are first and foremost Christians and citizens of the heavenly kingdom. So,
And so when I say Yahweh's kingdom, I do mean
The kingdom of Yahweh, not
that such
destruction.
came. Yeah, that is not part of Yahweh's kingdom, death and destruction. So, but not only were the attacks on that dreadful day carried out on the day that Jesus was born, but the best archaeological site. Now, this was just like amazing to me, just neat. It's neat. It's neat. The best archaeological site for the resting place of Noah's Ark was found on September 11th, 1952, when a Turkish government cartographer was flying over it and taking pictures. Andrew Jones, an investigator who researches the site, talks about that on the Blurry Creatures podcast, episode 350.
Which,
But
on a side note, is my favorite podcast to listen to.
They are quite fun.
If they happen to hear this and want us converse with them about anything,
For sure.
that would be great. I'll join in. I'll be happy to be there. Yeah. So
paid membership for them and everything. It's great. Lots of great content.
I have gone that as far as
Anyways,
Yeah.
back to
But what I'm thinking here is if evil forces can use the date that Jesus was born in to do evil deeds, then surely the spiritual forces of good, Yahweh's counsel, if you will, can use his birthday to announce something truly awesome. Okay, so I don't know if the site is where the ark is actually rested. However, the fact that it was his birthday was when it was found is just compelling to me. It's just neat. It's neat to look into and to see that the spiritual forces, good and evil, are still doing stuff and trying to, you know, put this out there, trying to either sway
Right.
people for good or for bad, for Christ.
Right.
And so I think that is
It is
just awesome. This is the type of stuff I geek out for,
Oh, yeah.
it's neat.
So,
So,
so what about the so we're talking about September 11th. There's this little bit of pattern in history, but what about the astronomical stuff? I know there's a lot there with that, isn't there?
oh yeah, yeah, there is. Yeah, like it's all over. Like I, the the sky was full of signs and wonders. Really, it has a lot to do with, and I think we get into this later as well, but it has a lot to do with the fact that the heavens declare the glory of God, right?
Right.
And so in the sky on September 11th, 3 BC, the sun was in Virgo, right? So the sun was actually, right there with the Virgin constellation, and the moon was at her feet, which is really neat because that's exactly what Revelation 12 is talking about.
No way.
And oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's really awesome because again, they put all this stuff into a uh, computer program, and it shows you exactly what happened on September 11th, and that
Yeah.
it's all correlates with Revelation 12, 1 through 2. And then one of the greatest points, like this is something I just like really just I geek out on a lot, is that Jupiter, the king planet that everyone calls the king planet, everybody knows
Yeah.
it's always been the king planet, was in conjunction with Regulus, the king star, in the constellation Leo,
Oh man.
which correlates with the Lion of Judah.
Lion of Judah.
And this is not speculation. This is not something this is something that astronomers, people who actually have degrees in this stuff, actually work out and research and put into software and found. And it correlates with what is said in Revelation 12, 1 through 2.
That's crazy. Yeah, I was thinking about. I'll pull it up here. Revelation 12, 1 through 2, and it said a great portent, a great sign appeared in heaven: a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. She was pregnant and was crying out in birth pangs and in agony giving birth. And that's like, people usually think of Revelation as a future sign, but I guess, but it may actually be describing this actual celestial sign at Jesus's birth, I guess you could say.
Right. And in turn, it's describing Jesus's birth. It's the
Hmm.
heavens were telling of his great, and any first century Jew, any a person who followed the stars, and anyone who knew the Old Testament scriptures would have known, okay, a king is being born, right? Even if they did not know the Old Testament scriptures,
Right.
those who followed the stars knew this was a sign of a divine king being born.
Right.
And
So,
so,
yeah, I mean, you got the Magi from the east, right? They follow the
right,
stars and they got it figured out.
yeah. And Heiser points out that this astronomical configuration, that it does narrow the date window down to literally a couple of hours on that day.
No way. Okay.
Yeah, that's why September 11th is so striking. They can actually narrow it down to just a few hours.
Hmm.
Yeah, and astronomy, it doesn't give us many one-time only markers,
Right.
but this is one of them, right?
Way.
Yeah. So it's not just that Virgo happens every year, right?
Yeah, right.
This specific alignment of Virgo, the sun, the moon, Jupiter, and Regulus, it's all incredibly rare.
Wow. That is absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah, it is.
yeah, and don't forget the Jewish festival context. Rosh Hashanah, Tishri 1 is also called the Feast of Trumpets. I know both of you have mentioned that earlier. It's the day associated with the coronation of kings in Jewish tradition, and there is a liturgical reading from Psalm 47, blowing of the shofar, and themes of divine kingship.
Right.
What better day for the birth of the King of Kings than the coronation day of the King of the universe? I know I said something like that earlier, but it's just really awesome.
And I mean, like, really, and it all just connects together just beautifully with the theology of Advent, right? Like, I mean, God
Oh,
entering
definitely.
creation on the anniversary of creation itself. Like, that's just
Yeah.
wild.
It's mind-blowing, and again, like I said earlier, I mean, this is theology that is so enriched, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it is so powerful. Okay, this is not just table talk. This is theology that can change lives.
Right.
That the king was born on the day of kings. I mean, ushered in. I mean, that's just amazing. And this all also lines up with the chronology of Herod's reign as well. For years, scholars dated Herod's death to be 4 BC,
Right.
which is which is why Jesus' birth was often placed between 6 and 4 BC.
Yeah.
But
Right.
more recent arguments based on Josephus, lunar eclipse data, and the evidence from coins, which is called numismatic evidence, and that's the dating of coins and what coins were used around that time. It suggests that Herod died in 1 BC.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
That makes more sense.
So yeah, so that means Jesus could have been born in 3 BC. And the Magi visited in 2 BC.
Okay.
And yeah, and which is really neat because we do know that the Magi did come later, but and Herod's slaughter of the innocents still fits the timeline perfectly with Matthew 22:16. Yeah, and that's a major strength of this reconstruction.
Yeah.
Yeah, and don't forget the Luke 1 to 2 timeline. If you track the priestly course of Abijah for Zechariah's service in Luke 1, John the Baptist's conception falls around late June at 15 months, and Jesus' birth lands around early September of 3 BC. And that lines up perfectly with this theory. So it's not just astronomy, the priestly calendar and Luke's chronology are consistent with a late summer or early autumn birth.
Yeah, and another thing that I've heard a lot, I've heard before, December 25th isn't really the day Jesus was born on. It's just a day, and they're like the only line of evidence. Never really heard the astronomical or some of these other ones, but the only ones is like, yeah, they wouldn't have had shepherds out in the fields in the middle of winter. They would have usually put those up, but
Yeah.
Luke 2 talks about the shepherds in the fields at night. That would have probably been that's early September on the hillsides of Bethlehem,
Yeah.
and that's, again, that lined up with all this other stuff you're saying really starts to make a lot more sense for sure.
Right. And you know what? Exactly about the Magi. If
Mhm.
Jesus was born 11 3 BC, Jupiter continued its movement for over a year. And on December 25th, 2 BC, now this is really neat, Jupiter entered a stationary point, directly over Bethlehem as viewed from Jerusalem. So really that matches Matthew 2:9, where the star, it was moving and it stood over the place where the child was. Because you got to remember, this is Jupiter and Regulus really together. So it's this giant star in the sky, and it's right over top of where the child was.
Right.
Because Matthew 2:9 doesn't say he's a baby.
Right.
He's a child. This is later. So what's really neat is December 25th could have been when the Magi got there. They find him in a house, not a manger. And so the nativity and the Magi's visit are two separate events. His birth and when the Magi showed up are different, which is a crucial distinction often lost in Christmas pageants and nativity scenes. And
but you got to the kids. Come on, man.
Oh, listen, my kids, they actually moved the Magi far away from the nativity scene.
Because lives all over the church after year.
They're like, they're like, even at our church, the church David and I go to, my kids actually have the Magi on their way to see the child at Christmas time.
I mean, I'm waiting around selling out. I was trying to explain the two natures of Christ to my kids tonight in the car. I was like, yeah, this isn't going well.
Anyways, so you mentioned Jupiter was what led the Magi, which is kind of crazy. I've been listening to the audiobook of the Second Coming of Saturn by Gilbert, and just hearing about these deities. So basically, like the Roman god, basically Kronos, led the Magi to the true king of the universe. It's just a side note there. Anyway, so with the Magi showing up on December 25th, 2 BC, that's kind of beautiful in a way. The actual birth possibly being on Tishri 1, the Magi arriving on December 25th, a year later, means the church's liturgical Christmas date still marks a real historical event, the visit of the Gentiles to the Messiah. It's the nations coming to the king. Not only that, but it justifies the gift giving. Any excuse for that. Jokes aside, we do see some modern traditions that actually do focus on this event with Epiphany, also known as like Three Kings Day or Theophany. So that's just a really interesting correlation.
That is extremely interesting.
It definitely helps us with, the we're not just borrowing a pagan holiday. Actually, it goes back pretty early, and it gives a lot more theological meaning to December 25th.
Right. That's definitely. And, Martin makes that argument explicitly. December 25th isn't a random invention. It's tied to real astronomical events and biblical symbolism. And, and I just have to say that before I ran into this material, when I really didn't think about when Jesus was born, and then when he actually was born, and then I heard that December 25th didn't have anything to do with it when I was in college. And so for years, I actually almost degraded December 25th as his birth. And now it's really neat to find out that actually it is very much a part of this whole idea and the whole matrix of ideas that we're thinking about here.
Yeah. So let's kind of bounce back a little bit. And you got some more stuff about. We've talked a little bit about Revelation chapter 12, and I kind of want to hit that again. Again, most of us think about it in purely eschatological, end times, apocalypse type terms. But can you give us a little bit more detail about like how this theory really helps us interpret Revelation 12? How does the birth of Christ help us interpret Revelation 12?
Yeah, most definitely. Revelation 12 is apocalyptic,
Right.
right? It's in Revelation. It's talking about the skies and what's being seen in the heavens. But apocalyptic doesn't mean it can't refer to historical events, something that happened in the past, right? Daniel is extremely apocalyptic, and there are things in it that happens when Daniel's alive. So John is describing a heavenly sign. The woman is Virgo, and the sun's right there with Virgo, and the moon is under her feet, and the birth of the male child who will rule the nations, right?
That's crazy. Right.
This, yeah. And this whole sign in the sky, this fits perfectly with a cosmic nativity sign
Mm.
in the sky. Okay. The ancient magi and Jewish readers alike would have understood this language in both symbolic and astronomical terms.
Huh.
That's how apocalyptic literature works. So it's theological meaning encoded in cosmic imagery.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's how you look at apocalyptic literature.
Yeah,
Huh.
that's pretty crazy. And, even the fact that it aligns precisely with the Feast of Trumpets just reinforces the theological resonance. And Trumpets announce kings, and kingship is at the heart of this feast. Not only this, but Tishri 1 is, as I'm pretty sure, did you mention earlier, Wes, that is thought to be Noah's birthday?
Yeah.
That's just as it.
Isn't that,
Well,
isn't that,
well,
isn't that neat? Yeah.
Jesus Christ, the Savior of the souls of all who will come to him, was born on the same day as a man that Yahweh chose to save mankind in the flood. If you were a first century Jew familiar with these signs, this would be a powerful statement. The Messiah has come.
Yeah, and because it's so powerful, I think really this needs to be like literally in the creeds. Like this needs to be absolute dogma in the church, right? Now,
Well, I guess we got to write a Fresh Ground Theology Creed.
that's right. Let me grab my envelope here and scratch out a creed on it real quick. Nah, of course. Like, all right, obviously this is limitations. It's not dogma. It wasn't in any early creed. And nobody's saying it's an article of faith. But, as a historical reconstruction, it's remarkably coherent and there's a lot of things that just line up.
Right. I mean, you're right. This is not something that you must believe this or you're unorthodox or you're not saved. I mean, that's something we do not want to put, but it does show that the biblical text, Jewish festal context, and and astronomy line up in a way that strongly suggests a real historical marker. And to say to make a point about what you were saying, I mean, sometimes I can go a little bit overboard with this, and I can say, this is exactly what it is. And my kids even look at me and say, "Hey, Dad, this it's not actually spelled out that much in the Bible, and you can't be
It out does it, Revelation
it
12.
is. It is. And I say yes, it is, but I'm not extremely dogmatic. But it also challenges the oversimplified narrative that Christmas is just pagan. In reality, yeah. December 25th has its roots in Christian theological reasoning and possibly corresponds to the Magi's arrival. It is something that is so potent and so there
Right.
that I have a very, very much a hard time looking at it and saying, okay, this isn't spot on.
Yeah.
There's so much evidence for it.
Yeah, and theologically, I think it's important to remember Jesus fulfills the Jewish feast not only in his death and resurrection, but in his birth as well.
Mm.
Born on Rosh Hashanah, died and rose during Passover, first fruits, poured out the
Oh, yeah.
Spirit at Pentecost. It's all one redemptive calendar. Like, it's pretty trippy.
Yeah, and what I find interesting is Rosh Hashanah, literally, if you translate that, means the head of the year. This is the beginning of the Jewish years. You also have that layer, and you just start putting all this together, and it's like, whoa, it's just an incredibly rich way, a meaningful way of viewing the Christian story. And one thing I've kind of grown to appreciate is like, you know what? Yeah, there might be a lot of things in our Christian tradition we can't like prove, but why would I strip all those things out? Like, I mean, I want to make sure that
Right. Yeah.
the core things I
Yeah.
believe, there's, but like, there's a lot of stuff we do and just we believe in tradition just because you know, it seems like this is where the evidence points, and it makes it mean so much more when you bring it in there. It makes it so much more interesting, like the dry, bare bones facts. Now we need the dry facts. We need like the Trinity explained in all of its, contemplated logic. But at the same time,
Yeah.
having the story, having, this being placed in Israel's story really fleshes it out. It embeds it into our lives pretty well. But
It just gives it such a richness.
yeah, for sure.
Right. That's so true. And that's part of why Heiser liked this view. He was careful,
Yeah,
right? He was careful. He himself would even say, "Hey, this isn't something we can just absolutely prove."
right.
But he appreciated the coherence of the biblical theological pattern that you see in this view. I mean, it all just fits together, right?
Yeah.
That's all there is to it. And that's why I'm such a huge fan of this view, of this subject. I have listened to Heiser's podcast on this subject, I don't know, 10 or 12 times because yeah,
Oh,
I love it.
Listen to one or two.
well, this is the first time hearing about it, but I'm very interested, and perhaps I should go listen to the Naked Bible podcast and listen to this episode out there. But anyways, well, we got to wrap it up for today. So, friends, whether you're celebrating December 25th as the birth of Christ, or just a visit of the Magi, or just really enjoying a good Christmas, and you're like, it's all true, just as the great feast of the incarnation, what really matters is the truth behind it, and that is God entered history in human flesh. And it's incredible to see how scripture, history,
Right.
the heavens all point to this specific night in 3 BC, when the Messiah, as you convinced me, is most likely born on this day. So,
Yeah, that's awesome. And I would like to take this is Wes. I would like to take a moment to thank the scholars and authors we referenced today. The scripture is Matthew 2, Luke 1 through 2, Revelation 12. Please go out there and read Revelation 12 and take a look at that. It's so great. Genesis 1:14, Genesis 49, 9 through 10, and Psalm 19:1. The primary historical sources were Flavius Josephus, the Antiquities of the Jews, and Roman astronomical records. They've got records from Rome.
time.
They're looking, yeah, it's kind of neat. And then there's the modern scholarship that we reference. Ernest L. Martin, The Star That Astonished the World. Michael Heiser's his lectures and podcast discussions on nativity and dating and Revelation 12, which you can check that out. It's a Naked Bible Podcast, episode 138 is one of them. And then you've got Bradley E. Schaefer, The Star of Bethlehem, A New Look at the Evidence. Then you've got Michael Molinar, The Star of Bethlehem, The Legacy of the Magi. And then Augustine. Yep. Took some from Augustine as well. Sermons on the Nativity. and Chrysostom homilies on Matthew.
Nice.
Yeah.
And there's also some liturgical stuff as well, I think, that we pulled from for this episode. But
Right. Chronography of 354.
oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And Wes, thanks for taking the time to share all of this with us. Honestly, it has been a while since I thought about the September 11th date
Appreciate
and
it.
all the theological implications that, outside of my random text to you back on September 11th saying like Merry Christmas or something. I think I sent you a text. Okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
we did. We texted back, Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
I tell my kids on September 11th, I tell my kids Merry Christmas on September 11th, and they kind of roll my eyes. Their eyes, not my eyes.
Yeah.
They roll their eyes. Yeah.
And I mean, this really enriches the Advent season, even though we celebrate later in the year, much like the Magi. And to the listeners, we're grateful you've chosen to spend this time with us. If you've enjoyed today's episode, we'd love for you to subscribe and listen wherever you get your podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, so you don't miss what's brewing next. Be sure.
Yeah.
I think next week, which episode are we doing next week again?
Next week is dang it, I forget what that one is. Edit. It's going to be number 4. What's the one that we did?
Oh,
I can't even remember at this point. Episode number 4.
The Advent of God made flesh beyond the flannelgraph.
There it is. Yes, beyond the flannelgraph. That was, yep. Yeah. So, next week we'll be listening to Advent of God made flesh. So, end edit. If you want to throw that in there, that's great.
For which part? I can just do my start at and to the listeners. I'll start there. Okay. Edit. And to the listeners, we're grateful you've chosen to spend this time with us. If you've enjoyed today's episode, we'd love for you to subscribe and listen wherever you get your podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, so you don't miss what's brewing next, which next week will be the incarnation or the Advent of God made flesh beyond the flannelgraph, which is a title I'm very proud of. As you know, we all had our Sunday school lessons when we were little. The flannelgraph, super basic.
Oh yeah.
And there's so much more
Yeah.
to go past that flannelgraph. So yeah, next time we'll be talking about that.
Awesome. Yeah. And if you
I
want
look forward to it.
Yeah, for sure. If you want to dig a little deeper too, head over to freshgroundtheology.com. There you can find articles, ways to get in touch with us, and even check out our merch store to support the show. And right now, you might be able to get some FGT merch before Christmas. We're especially proud of David's design on the St. Nicholas shirt and hoodies, which are called Punch Heresy in the Face, metaphorically, of course. And so they are quite interesting and quite good. But hey, David, would you like to close us out here in the Lord's Prayer?
Sure. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
The Lord bless you and keep you.
The introduction
the Lord
music in
cause
this
his
episode
face
is
to shine
What
upon
Child
you
Is
and be
This?
gracious
Dark
to
piano
you.
version
The
by
Lord lift up his
Mayu,
countenance upon you.
based on the
and give you
traditional
peace.
English folk song.
Thank you for
Greenleaves,
joining us on
used by
Fresh Ground
permission under
Theology.
royalty-free
And until
license.
next time, keep
You can
your
find
coffee
more
strong
of
and your
Mayu's music on
theology deep.
Spotify and
I'll see you
Bandcamp.
next time.